This is the download recap from Sounds Profitable, the most important news from this week, and why it matters to people in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. The download recap is brought to you by Podscribe. You can find out more at podscribe.com. With that, let's get into this week's news. First up, podcast launch on beehiiv. Newsletter and blogging platform beehiiv has rolled out audio podcast hosting and monetization services. In an interview with Sounds Profitable partner Brian Barletta, beehiiv CEO Tyler Denk says podcasts are a natural fit, as podcasts and newsletters have a lot in common. Here's a quote from the interview. Quote, "Our roadmap is always heavily driven by customers, and podcasting was the missing piece. It came up consistently across customers of all sizes. Growth is one of the biggest challenges in podcasting. Newsletters drive podcast downloads. Podcasts drive newsletter signups. We see huge opportunity there in both directions." End quote. Denk positions adding podcasts as a core pillar of beehiiv, allowing beehiiv publishers with podcasts hosted elsewhere to bring all of their publications into one service. beehiiv's hosting has been designed to be IAB compliant, with Denk saying the company is about to begin the formal certification process. The center cannot hold, from Tom Webster. Sounds Profitable's latest research, The Last Quarter, looks at the 25% of Americans who have never consumed a podcast. In this week's Sounds Profitable article, Tom Webster focuses on the political affiliations of the last quarter, as there's a group being left behind. Podcast holdouts aren't politically neutral, as data from the last quarter study shows a linear gradient running from one end of the political spectrum to the other. Among conservatives who identify as very liberal, 17% have never consumed a podcast. For very conservative, the number is 27%. Webster cautions against the easy conclusion: conservatism and podcasts don't make for a good cultural fit. The top charts of podcasting have plenty of conservative-leaning podcasts. If there was an inherent disconnect between conservative Americans and podcasting, those shows wouldn't be able to exist at scale. The last quarter's data shows the media diet of conservative Americans is largely dominated by four platforms: Facebook at 84%, YouTube at 74%, AM/FM broadcast radio at 69%, and network cable TV at 56%. Here's a quote from the article. Quote, "These are not fringe or disconnected people. They are active media consumers, but these four platforms share a critical property. They surface content to you. Facebook's algorithm decides what appears in your feed. YouTube's recommendation engine decides what to autoplay next. Broadcast radio and cable TV are programmed by somebody else entirely. In none of these environments does the user need to go looking for something new." End quote. Conversely, podcasting requires audience initiative. The current system largely relies on audiences knowing a show exists, seeking it out directly, and subscribing. There's a gulf between how podcasts are designed to be engaged with and how the conservative holdout engages with their media. Those on either end of the political spectrum have established media architecture driving them to podcasts. Public media like NPR brought liberal audiences into the medium as it grew, while algorithmically tailored conservative content does the same for the other side. There is no institutional infrastructure designed to promote moderate content. Podcasting doesn't have an institutional editorial layer acting as a curator that can give moderate takes equal footing among algorithmically tuned takes in either direction. A big problem facing podcasting's holdouts isn't a content one, it's discovery architecture problem. Which leads to the operative question: how does the podcast industry build discovery pathways that don't rely on algorithmic amplification to function? Otonal and the Asahi Shimbun Company jointly released results of their survey on podcast usage in Japan. Conducted from December 5th to December 6th, 2025, this new survey targeted 10,000 respondents age 15 to 69 in Japan. Here's a quote from the article. Quote, "In 2020, when the survey began, the podcast usage rate in Japan, users who listen to podcasts at least once a month, was 14.2%. The usage rate has been trending upward, reaching 18.2% in the 2025 survey." End quote. When looking at specific demographics, 15 to 19-year-olds reach a 40.5% usage rate, a 6.4 percentage point increase year over year. In addition, 20 to 29-year-olds reach 28.8% usage, a 1.5 percentage point year over year increase. In comparison to respondents who don't consume podcasts, those who partake have a higher ratio of corporate decision makers. By comparison to 7 forms of media, podcasting's ratio of corporate decision makers ranks second place behind only newspaper readers. Audio has the winning hand. The industry refuses to play it. Sound Insight's Ben Robbins' biggest takeaway from Advertising Week Europe is the notion that podcasting is data-rich, but insight-poor. Across 12 sessions, compelling data abounded, but emotional narratives explaining podcasting's success were scarce. Robbins attributes this largely to companies closely guarding proprietary data on podcast impact, citing competitive advantage, legal concerns, non-disclosure agreements, and more as reasons as to why they're keeping quiet. Here's a quote from the article, quote, "The companies with the most to share and the most resources to do it keep their learnings close to their chest, hoarding the very evidence that could grow the market for everyone. The cards are already in our hands. Someone just has to play it." End quote. In a fragmented media landscape, connection is valuable. Podcasts excel at connection, but articulating it requires a cohesive narrative linking data points. There is a story coming, though. This May, Robbins and Sounds Profitable's Tom Webster will debut the findings of the 2026 UK Advertising Landscape Study at the podcast show London. This new report represents the largest study of advertising effectiveness conducted across UK media, surveying 5,000 adults over more than 20 platforms. Stay tuned for more details as they become available. As for the rest of the news, these are quick hits that are articles I've covered throughout the week that didn't quite make it into top story today, but are still worth including in your weekend reading. First up, video recordings of presentations from this year's Podcast Movement Evolutions, hosted at South by Southwest, are now available on the official Podcast Movement YouTube channel. The playlist features 25 videos spanning from 10-minute discovery track sessions to full 50-minute panels. Branded podcast agency JAR Podcast Solutions launched JAR Replay, a new audience activation product. JAR Replay lets brands and publishers identify recent podcast listeners and re-engage them with premium sound-on visual audio ads in a brand-safe mobile environment. Inside Radio covers the launch of SG Creative, a new audio advertising service created from a partnership between Stream Guys and Nueva Network. SG Creative will be demoed publicly at the NAB show April 19th through 22nd in Las Vegas. NBC Studios has chosen Triton Digital as the provider of key components in its digital audio and podcasting infrastructure, including hosting, monetization, audience measurement, and audience insights. And finally, Spotify has announced new carousel ads in Now Playing, brand takeovers of popular playlists, and other new features in their ads manager platform. That was the download recap brought to you by Sounds Profitable. I know I go through the stories fast, so remember, in your show notes, there is a link that will take you to today's episode post on soundsprofitable.com, where you can find every single link I just talked about. You can also subscribe to get the newsletter version of the download sent straight to your inbox. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Our producers are myself, Brian Barletta, Molly DeMillier, and Tom Webster. And as always, a special thanks to you for sticking with me as I brought you some of the top news from this week in the business of podcasting. Robot?
Download complete.